Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to this Sunday morning. I, Divika Gautam, and my fellow team members, Garima and Divya, welcome you all to the panel discussion on the topic Indian School, a Space for All.
Educator Dina Saman rightly quoted, every child deserves an education that guarantees the safety to learn in the comfort of one's own skin.
Today, as India steps in its 75th year of independence, it envisions achieving gender equality and empowerment across all ages. This vision is in par with clause of SDG Goal 4.5 to eliminate discrimination in education on gender equality. But is it possible to achieve equality if a child from an early age is not sensitized to foster respect for all people regardless of gender? This panel will bring out the importance of gender sensitivity, promoting a gender inclusive education atmosphere in our schools so that it is a space for all. While we have different schemes and policies to address increasing enrollment of girl child in schools, there is a need to sensitize children about other existing gender too while educating them. Through this panel, we will understand the present scenario of Indian schools through the lens of gender inclusion and examine existing policies, institutional mechanisms, and pedagogy. This panel will help us understand the ground realities of our school education system and how far it has considered the gender factor in this system. It is in this regard that we have organized this session to bring forth the problems being faced and to come up with meaningful solutions for the promising future of all.
I will now invite Divya for welcome address.
Thank you. So, I, Divya Joshi, welcome you all to our second panel discussion of the conference titled Indian School, a Space for All. Firstly, I would like to thank Sarkari School for organizing this conference on child rights and for providing us a platform to discuss this very crucial question of how can we make schools accessible to all. Through this panel discussion, we aim to bring into the picture the various problems faced by poor children in gaining access to schools and quality education and to come up with the solutions for these problems. In order to shed light on this issue, we are grateful to have with us a panel of distinguished guest speakers from diverse fields. Today, we have with us Ms. Shubhi Bhandari ma'am. She is an India qualified lawyer practicing in domains of corporate law, data privacy, and cyber security. Thank you so much, ma'am, for gracing the event with your presence. We are also delighted to have with us Ms. Rashmi Tiwari, who has been a head teacher, primary school, Vashirat, Ganj, English medium, Vicharia, Unnao, Uttar Pradesh. We are also proud to host Preethi ma'am. She has been an assistant professor of law for the past 3 years. Thank you so much for joining us today, ma'am. We are thrilled to have this women power force here with us today. How can we forget our audience, without whose presence the session is meaningless? Thank you so much for joining us today. We are sure that you will truly enjoy this valuable discussion.
Thank you so much, Divya. I would again welcome all of you to taking the time out on this Sunday morning and being with us here today. We will now proceed with the session. Our guest speakers will share their insightful views on the topic first. This will be followed by a discussion round where the attendees can put forth their questions for our panelists.
Our first guest speaker for today is Shubhi Bhandari. She is an India qualified lawyer practicing in the domain of corporate law, data privacy, and cybersecurity. She is an established author with Bloomsbury India and a regular contributor to legal, socio-polity academia through independent research. Philanthropy is her second nature and she firmly believes in leading with a purpose. She has been serving as a state president of the Cybersecurity Council WICCI from Tamil Nadu since 2020 with the purpose to redefine and reconstruct women's and children's equality and advancement in the cybersecurity space. We are honored today to have you with us, ma'am. We would like to invite you to the session and have your valuable words and observation.
Thank you so much, team, for such a warm welcome. I'm really excited to be sharing my views on a really good topic, which is Indian education and an exclusivity for all, especially the marginalized sections, which is women and children. Now, when we talk about Indian education, the first thing that comes to our mind are schools, right? So we all have been decently educated. We all come from a very good educational background where we understand the importance of school. Now, schools, they are inherently extremely powerful sites for any sort of change or social transformation, something that all of us have gone through as a process. For this transformation to actually come into picture, it is extremely important for any school, be it at an urban level or at a rural level, to have a very transformative approach in order to revolutionize what they teach, how they teach, and what better they can do. Now, what they teach and how they teach is pretty much regulated by external factors with respect to what has been happening in environment where this transformation needs to take place. Now, the source of this transformation for any school site is the curriculum. Therefore, it is extremely important for any school to expand the very nature and scope of its curriculum to include a sheer focus on what values of integrity, the democratic values of equality and liberty, which is central to all our existence, are truly incorporated. Now, when we talk about equality, we particularly talk about gender equality, which is the central theme of this entire conference. When we talk about gender equality, it is as important as any other regular subject like mathematics, languages, science, social science, etc. Hence, this particular theme of gender equality is extremely important to be instilled in students at a very primary level so that they are able to process as they grow. So, from the ground level, if you instill the basic nuances of why equal treatment of all the sex, be it women, be it men, be it other categories, as some people might identify, is important. When we look at what has happened after and during the pandemic of COVID 19, we realize that both at a national level in India and at an international level, the entire discourse around girls' education has particularly changed. It has changed in a way that there is an urgency for people to now clearly and transparently understand that all these developmental promises regarding equality to be taken seriously, regarding women getting the basic right of education, which is instilled by constitution, is still there and is effectively discourse amongst all these sectors. Now, when you talk about education being given to any woman or any child, I'm focusing on women and child because out of all the sex, these are the most marginalized sectors who are somewhere deprived of the basic educational rights. When we talk about education being given to all these sectors, we firstly talk about not just basic nuances of education, but also high quality secondary education. Why high quality secondary education? Because this is a very essential and a vital pathway to achieving the so-called very common regular nuances of girls empowerment and gender equality. When you talk about, or let's say when you combine girls empowerment or women empowerment with gender equality, you usually use it in conjunction with girls education, implying a very necessary correlation between having access to right to education but not being able to complete the school enough. Now, the reasons for not completing the school could be various, could be peer pressure, could be a lack of financial assistance, could be lack of logistical assistance, lack of awareness, etc., etc. Therefore, in regard of all these circumstances, it becomes extremely important to not just focus on empowering certain set of society, but also following through the process, the content. especially the curriculum that addresses all these inequitable social norms, structures adequately and in a manner that is easily comprehensible by everybody at a grassroots level. Now, when you talk about actually bringing any transformative changes in the curriculum, it's equally important to also introduce this process in a very systematized manner. We all have studied social sciences in ninth, 8th, 10th grade, so on and so forth. And we also understand the imperative need of having a social, kind of a political understanding of gender as an official school curriculum that is also imbibed in our personal, right? And this is for both men, women, for boys, girls, however you want to look at it. But what happens at post primary level in all state and central run school boards is very important, because at one end you teach students about how it is imperative to treat everybody with respect, with integrity, and you also have explicit conversations around it. You encourage debates around it. But what actually happens when all these nuances are to be practiced in your reality as you grow up? The entire critical dialogues of gender bias, of power, of integrity, these all need to become an official part of a student's experience, which is why having a standalone subject, an independent subject as gender education is extremely important and could actually become one of the most thought after subjects that a student would learn, similar to moral science. The reason why students are taught moral science is so that they can have all these personal values imbibed at a really, really young age. You kind of give legitimacy to creating a strong impetus for incorporating all these gender-based values in all the students, right? Hence, equating moral education, moral science, or let's say gender education at same par, and then focusing on a very organized curriculum as to the importance, the various ways, practices, do's and not, having more practical experience to it is something that every student must experience through their school life. Now, when I talk about gender education per se, the onus lies not just on the students to learn and incorporate these nuances through a very organized subject of gender education that might be incorporated in the curriculum. The onus is also on the teachers to actually go through the entire requisite development process and to have such materials in place so that all these agents of social change, I'd say, these could be perceived in practicality. As a lawyer, my training is only effective if I put it into practice. It's not effective if I only keep reading and researching on it. Likewise, training for all the teachers, especially the primary level teachers, will only be effective if they themselves are given certain level of discourse with respect to the gender moral related issues that our community as a whole is holding up to, is trying to fight against, is trying to bring change for. Therefore, besides having a proper gender based education curriculum for students, it's also extremely imperative to have similar training for teachers who could actually instill this knowledge, this experience into practice into their students. Conclusively, I just suggest that it's very important for our country to have a gender transformative approach, especially in a phase where the child is still up and growing, meaning that whenever you approach primary level schools, it's very, very important to instill certain kind of soft skills and soft subjects that could actually be of tremendous help and support in shaping the very, very core of an individual or of a student once they grow up. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, ma'am. I think really talking about, having a subject like gender education, especially for the primary levels, so that, we sort of tend to give that training from the beginning. I think it's really important. And plus, talking about, yes, obviously, teacher training as well, because that is where the source of information is coming from, essentially. So thank you so much for that, ma'am. We will now be moving forward with our next speaker. Education is the key to the door of all dreams. Our next speaker, Rashmi Tiwari, has been a head teacher of primary school Vashirat, Ganj, Unnao, Uttar Pradesh. She has also been conferred with UP State Teacher Award. Ma'am, we please request you कि आप आएं and grace this session with your encouraging words.
थैंक यू मैम। सबसे पहले तो मैं आप सभी को बहुत ही वार्म वेलकम करूंगी कि इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में आप सभी आए, समय निकाला, और आज जो बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट टॉपिक पे हम बात कर रहे हैं एसडीजी, उसके लिए हमें बहुत गर्व फील होना चाहिए कि इतनी अच्छी एक पॉलिसी हमारे पास है कि जिससे हम बहुत सारे वेरियस काइंड्स ऑफ जितने भी प्रॉब्लम्स है उनको सॉल्व कर सकते हैं। तो मैं रिप्रेजेंट कर रही हूँ यहाँ पे एक तरह से जो फोर्थ गोल है हमारा एसडीजी का, जो है क्वालिटी एजुकेशन का। अभी मैम ने बताया कि अगर हम इस क्षेत्र में बहुत बेहतर कार्य कर सकते हैं तो वो प्राइमरी लेवल के टीचर्स ही कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि हमें बच्चा शुरू से मिल रहा होता है, हम उसको किस प्रकार पढ़ा रहे होते हैं, किस प्रकार इन चीजों को समझा रहे होते हैं, ये मैटर करता है। एक तरह से एक जो फाउंडेशन हम मेक कर रहे होते हैं, तो वो बच्चा प्राइमरी लेवल पे हमारे पास आ रहा होता है और हम उसके अंदर इन सारे गोल्स के प्रति जो अवेयरनेस डाल रहे होते हैं वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होती है। अभी इसके पहले जो हमारी गेस्ट स्पीकर थी रिस्पेक्टेड मैम ने यही कहा कि प्राइमरी लेवल पे इन गोल्स को बच्चों के अंदर सेट करना या इनके प्रति अंडरस्टैंडिंग डेवलप करना बहुत जरूरी हो जाता है। तो जो हमारा एसडीजी का फोर्थ गोल है क्वालिटी एजुकेशन, आज मैं बेसिकली उसी पे बात करूंगी। वैसे तो उन 17 गोल को हमें एक तरह से जागरूकता फैलानी है और उन सबको कवर करने की कोशिश करना है, बट बीइंग अ टीचर जो फोर्थ गोल है उसके ऊपर हम बात कर लेते हैं क्वालिटी एजुकेशन। हमें हर तरह से कोशिश यही करनी चाहिए कि एजुकेशन जो है वो सिर्फ एक लिटरेसी तक ही ना रह जाए, एक कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव एजुकेशन हम बच्चे को पहुंचा रहे हो कि हम जो पढ़ा रहे हैं उसको हम जो सिखा रहे हैं वो उसको अपने जीवन में भी ला सके या उनके मूल्यों के तहत वो कार्य कर सके। तो अगर हम क्वालिटी एजुकेशन की बात करें तो सिर्फ एक फोर्थ गोल आ जाता है कि क्वालिटी एजुकेशन होनी चाहिए बच्चों की, लेकिन हाँ ठीक है, क्वालिटी एजुकेशन एक सिर्फ इसी वर्ड में बहुत सारी चीजें इंक्लूड होती हैं। जैसे हम पहला पॉइंट अगर लेते हैं क्वालिटी एजुकेशन का, तो वो आता है इक्विटेबल एजुकेशन। हम सभी को एजुकेशन दे रहे होंगे, हम हर फील्ड में काम कर रहे होंगे कि कोई भी बच्चा ऐसा ना बच पाए, कोई भी ऐसा हमारा शख्स ना बच पाए जिसके अंदर एजुकेशन का अभाव हो, जो शिक्षा से वंचित रह पाए। तो हमें लगभग हर क्षेत्र को कवर करना है और ज्यादा से ज्यादा अवेयरनेस फैलानी है कि व्यक्ति के जीवन में शिक्षा का कितना महत्व है। जैसे कहा गया है एजुकेशन इज द मोस्ट पावरफुल वेपन, तो हमको इस चीज को सभी के अंदर शामिल करना है, हमको सबको जागरूक करना है कि उन्हें शिक्षित होना है। अगर क्वालिटी एजुकेशन के अंदर हम सेकंड पॉइंट पे आते हैं तो ये है प्राइमरी एजुकेशन में, जैसे अभी हम कह रहे हैं कि प्री प्राइमरी या प्री सेकेंडरी एजुकेशन के ऊपर हमें फोकस करना है। तो विद्या प्रवेश है, बाल वाटिका है, कई तरह के ऐसे कार्यक्रम है जो अभी यूपी गवर्नमेंट ने भी लॉन्च किए हैं, और निपुण भारत मिशन जो कि हमारा एक नेशनल प्रोग्राम है उसके थ्रू भी हम चल रहे हैं कि हम किसी तरह से एसडीजी के जो फोर्थ गोल है उसको कंप्लीट कर सके। ना सिर्फ फोर्थ गोल के ऊपर बल्कि हम काम कर रहे हैं कि हम 17 गोल को किस तरह से कंप्लीट कर पाए। जैसे हम हेल्थ और हाइजीन पे भी काम कर रहे हैं, हम स्टारवेशन को भी प्रिवेंट करने के लिए काम कर रहे हैं, हम वाटर सेविंग पे भी काम कर रहे हैं। हम इन सारी चीजों को लेकर चल सकते हैं एजुकेशन के थ्रू। थर्ड पॉइंट आता है अफोर्डेबल। जैसे कोई भी वोकेशनल ट्रेनिंग हो, टेक्निकल ट्रेनिंग हो या किसी तरह के हम स्किल्स बच्चे को दे रहे हो तो वो सभी के एक्सेस में हो, हर व्यक्ति उनको पाने के लायक हो, या किसी भी तरह से हम इस तरह से कोशिश कर रहे होंगे कि हर बंदे को हम एक टेक्निकल ट्रेनिंग या कोई भी वोकेशनल ट्रेनिंग दे सकते हैं जैसे वो अपना जीवन यापन आसानी से कर रहा हो। क्वालिटी एजुकेशन में जो फोर्थ पॉइंट हम इंक्लूड करते हैं वो है स्किल्स डेवलपमेंट। हम कोई ना कोई स्किल बच्चे के अंदर ऐसी जरूर इंक्लूड करना चाहेंगे जिससे वो आगे अपने जीवन यापन को आसान कर सके, या ऐसी स्किल्स उनके अंदर जरूर होनी चाहिए जिससे वो आगे चल के ऐसा ना फील करे कि हमने पढ़ाई की तो हमने सिर्फ लिटरेसी तो गेन कर ली लेकिन हमें जीवन कौशल नहीं आया। तो एक स्किल्स पे भी फोकस्ड हम प्रोग्राम चलाना चाहेंगे। फिफ्थ पॉइंट जिसको मैं ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस देती हूँ वो है डिस्क्रिमिनेशन। डिस्क्रिमिनेशन अगर हम एजुकेशन में बात करें तो ये आता है कि कोई पुअर है, कोई डिसेबल है, या किसी भी तरह का जैसे जेंडर की बात आती है तो कोई भी शिक्षा से वंचित ना रह सके। हमें इस डिस्क्रिमिनेशन को भी कवर करते हुए चलना है। कई बार ऐसा होता है कि बच्चा डिसेबल होता है तो पेरेंट्स उसको घर पे ही रख लेते हैं कि ये कैसे स्कूल जाएगा, किस तरह से सरवाइव करेगा। हम इस चीज का बहुत ख्याल रखते हैं कि स्कूल्स में बच्चा आए, उसका एटलीस्ट एडमिशन हो जाए और वो अपने जीवन को सुधारने के लिए कम से कम इतना नॉलेज तो गेन कर ही सके कि वो जीवन में एक सामान्य व्यक्ति की तरह जी सके। या कोई पुअर है, अगर उसके माता पिता के पास इतना पैसा नहीं है कि वो स्कूल में बच्चे को प्रॉपर एजुकेशन दे सके, तो एसडीजी के फोर्थ गोल के थ्रू हम ये भी कवर करने की कोशिश कर रहे होते हैं कि बच्चे को किसी भी तरह से धन के अभाव में शिक्षा से वंचित ना होना पड़े, वो सारी चीजें हासिल कर सके जो एक अच्छे घर का बच्चा, या आप ये कह सकते हैं इकोनॉमिकली जो साउंड है उस बच्चे के साथ वो उस तरह की एजुकेशन को गेन कर सके। इट मीन्स हम इस पे काम कर रहे होंगे कि एजुकेशन टू ऑल, हम एजुकेशन एटलीस्ट हर व्यक्ति तक पहुंचाने की पूरी कोशिश करेंगे। सिक्स पॉइंट जैसे हम लेते हैं कि फाउंडेशनल लिटरेसी एंड न्यूमरेसी। कई बार ऐसा होता है कि बच्चा जब पढ़ने के लिए आता है स्कूल में तो उसको इंटरेस्ट नहीं डेवलप होता है और उसके द्वारा मोस्टली ड्रॉप आउट की प्रॉब्लम्स आ जाती हैं। बच्चा ड्रॉप आउट ना होने पाए, बच्चे को पढ़ाई में इंटरेस्ट हो, इसके लिए हम लिटरेसी और न्यूमरेसी पे काम कर रहे होंगे कि लिटरेसी के थ्रू अगर बच्चे के अंदर रुचि हम जागृत कर लेंगे, ऐसे कुछ इनोवेशंस हम डालते हैं या ऐसे कुछ हम स्ट्रेटेजीज के थ्रू बच्चे के एजुकेशन को कंटिन्यू करते हैं कि बच्चा एजुकेशन में अपने आप को कंफर्टेबल फील करता है, तभी वो आगे चलता है। अदरवाइज कभी क्या होता है, प्राइमरी सेक्शन के बाद बच्चे मोस्टली ड्रॉप आउट हो जाते हैं और ये प्रॉब्लम रूरल एरियाज में बहुत ज्यादा होती है। कभी कभी डिस्टेंस का भी प्रॉब्लम आता है कि बच्चा ड्रॉप आउट हो जाता है, लेकिन मोस्ट जो ये होता है कि बच्चा इंटरेस्ट ही नहीं ले रहा होता है और पेरेंट्स को भी यही लगता है कि ठीक है बच्चा इंटरेस्टेड नहीं है, हम उसको ड्रॉप आउट करा देते हैं, एटलीस्ट उसने फिफ्थ तक या कोई छोटी प्राइमरी क्लासेस तक कम से कम वो स्कूल गया तो है, यही से बात खत्म हो जाती है और हमारा एजुकेशन लेवल डाउन होने लगता है। सेवेंथ पॉइंट जो आता है ग्लोबल सिटीजनशिप का। देखिए एजुकेशन वो वेपन है कि जिसके द्वारा हम ग्लोबली कनेक्ट हो सकते हैं। नॉलेज तो बहुत है लेकिन जब हम कनेक्ट नहीं हो पा रहे हैं, जब हम किसी चीज का इस्तेमाल नहीं कर पा रहे हैं तो हम शिक्षा के महत्व को नहीं समझ पा रहे हैं, या शिक्षा को किस तरह से हमें ग्लोबल करना है, किस तरह से हर व्यक्ति को शिक्षा के प्रति जागरूक करना है, ये भी हमें कवर करना है। जो तीन और मुख्य बिंदु होते हैं जो हम अगर क्वालिटी एजुकेशन की बात करें तो इसमें होता है बिल्ड एंड अपग्रेड इंक्लूसिव बट सेफ स्कूल बिल्डिंग्स। हमें इस तरह की स्कूल बिल्डिंग्स भी प्रोवाइड करनी जो बच्चे के लिए सेफ हो और एक तरह से इंक्लूसिव हो, बच्चे का इंटरेस्ट हो पढ़ाई के प्रति। साथ ही साथ हम पेरेंट्स को भी किसी तरह मोटिवेट कर रहे हो कि वो बच्चे को पढ़ने के लिए स्कूल में किसी न किसी तरह से अरेंज कर दे कि बच्चा एटलीस्ट सेकेंडरी लेवल तक तो पढ़े, जहां पे हम उसे कुछ ना कुछ ऐसी वोकेशनल ट्रेनिंग दे चुके होंगे या कुछ ऐसे स्किल्स उसके अंदर डेवलप कर चुके होंगे कि बच्चा एक अच्छा जीवन यापन कर सकता है। नेक्स्ट आता है कि हायर एजुकेशन स्कॉलरशिप। अगर हम बच्चे को हायर लेवल पे भी अच्छे स्कॉलरशिप प्रोवाइड कर रहे होंगे तो बच्चे के सामने जो धनाभाव के कारण जो ड्रॉप आउट बढ़ता है वो कवर कर रहे होंगे, और हम कोशिश ये करें कि हम हायर लेवल पे भी बच्चे के लिए एक अच्छी स्कॉलरशिप अरेंज कर रहे हो। नेक्स्ट एंड मेन टॉपिक अगर इसका है तो ये है कि इंक्रीज द सप्लाई ऑफ टीचर्स। हम बच्चे को पढ़ाने के लिए ऐसे टीचर्स का अरेंजमेंट करें जो अच्छे क्वालिफाइड हो और साथ ही साथ वो बहुत क्वालिटी एजुकेशन दे रहे हो, या उन्होंने अपने जीवन को शिक्षा के प्रति समर्पित कर दिया हो। तो इस तरह के क्वालिटी टीचर्स जो है उनका अरेंजमेंट भी बनता है। अगर हम एसडीजी के फोर्थ लक्ष्य को पाने के लिए पूरी तरह से प्रयास कर रहे हैं, तो उसके लिए बहुत जरूरी होता है कि हम इन सारी चीजों को कवर कर रहे हो। 287 मिलियन पीपल आर इलिटरेट इन इंडिया। हम बात कर रहे हैं क्वालिटी एजुकेशन की, लेकिन अगर इतनी इलिटरेसी है तो कैसे है? इन सारे पॉइंट्स को हमें कवर करना पड़ेगा। 37% ऑफ ग्लोबल लेवल पे है कि जो इलिटरेट है, लेकिन इंडिया में इतनी इलिटरेसी बढ़ रही है कि हम एजुकेशन पे उतना काम नहीं कर पाए हैं। इस बार जो हमारी प्रेजेंट गवर्नमेंट है, उसने एजुकेशन पे काफी फंड भी इन्वेस्ट किया है, और काफी ऐसी पॉलिसीज चलाई है जिसके थ्रू हम एसडीजी के इन लेवल्स को कवर कर रहे होते हैं। इसके साथ ही साथ स्कूल्स में और बहुत सारी ऐसी चीजें होती है जिनको हम कवर कर रहे होते हैं। ना सिर्फ हम फोर्थ गोल की बात करते हैं, बल्कि जैसे वाटर का है, वाटर को हम कैसे वेस्ट होने से बचा रहे होते हैं, ये सारी चीजें हम स्कूल के थ्रू, बच्चों के थ्रू कर रहे हो सकते हैं। एनवायरनमेंट को क्लीन कैसे रख सकते हैं, एनवायरनमेंट को सेफ कैसे रख सकते हैं, ये सारी बातें हम स्कूल्स के थ्रू चला सकते हैं। और जो मेन मुद्दा आता है गर्ल्स एजुकेशन का, हम उनको किस तरह से मोटिवेट करें कि गर्ल्स जो मोस्टली सेकेंडरी लेवल तक पहुंचती ही नहीं है, प्राइमरी एजुकेशन के बाद वो ड्रॉप आउट हो जाती हैं। तो उसके लिए भी स्कूल के थ्रू ऐसे कुछ इनिशिएटिव लेने हैं जिससे गर्ल्स अपनी एजुकेशन को कंटिन्यू रखें, एटलीस्ट वो उस लेवल तक तो पहुंच ही जाएं कि वो ग्रेजुएट हो जाएं। और साथ ही साथ उनके अंदर कुछ ऐसी वोकेशनल ट्रेनिंग्स या कुछ स्किल्स भी डेवलप हो जाएं कि अगर वो कोई अच्छी जॉब नहीं गेन कर सकती हैं, तो घर में रह के कोई छोटा मोटा बिजनेस स्टार्ट कर सकती हैं, और अपनी कम्युनिटी को इन्वॉल्व करते हुए वो किस तरह से अपने परिवार का भी पालन पोषण कर सकती हैं, और साथ ही साथ समाज को भी अपना योगदान दे सकती हैं। तो इस तरह से हम बात करते हैं, अगर एसडीजी के गोल्स को गेन करने के लिए तो काफी अच्छा काम कर सकते हैं। हम लोग अपने स्कूल्स में भी इलेक्ट्रिसिटी को सेव करने के लिए सोलर एनर्जी को किस तरह से यूटिलाइज कर सकते हैं, इन सारी चीजों पे भी बात कर रहे होते हैं। आज कई सारे ऐसे यूपी गवर्नमेंट की प्रोग्राम चल रहे हैं जिसमें महिला सशक्तिकरण की बात हो रही है, मिशन शक्ति की बात हो रही है, निपुर भारत मिशन चल रहा है। इन सारी चीजों के थ्रू भी हम इन गोल्स को कवर कर सकते हैं। तो मेरा इतना ही कहना था कि लास्ट में कि एसडीजी का जो फोर्थ गोल है वो बहुत ही मेन गोल है, और साथ ही साथ ये एक ऐसा लक्ष्य है, क्वालिटी एजुकेशन। अगर हमने एजुकेट कर दिया, अगर हमने बच्चों में एजुकेशन के प्रति प्यार डेवलप कर दिया, पेरेंट्स को हमने कन्विंस कर लिया कि अगर उनके बच्चे का जीवन अच्छा करना है तो उन्हें एजुकेट तो करना ही होगा, तो इस तरह से हम ये सारे गोल्स को कवर कर सकते हैं, ना सिर्फ एक या दो बल्कि 17 गोल्स पे ही काम कर सकते हैं। इसी के साथ मैं आज की बात खत्म करती हूँ। धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू सो मच मैम। आपने क्वालिटी एजुकेशन पे बात करी, गर्ल्स एजुकेशन पे बात करी, स्किल डेवलपमेंट में बात करी, एंड मेन थिंग यू कोटेड, एजुकेशन इज द मोस्ट पावरफुल वेपन दैट वी कैन यूज टू चेंज द वर्ल्ड। हमें आपके वर्ड से बहुत ज़्यादा इंस्पिरेशन मिली। थैंक यू मैम। नाउ लेट्स मूव टू our next panelist. An amazing woman powerhouse is Preethi ma'am. She has been an assistant professor in law for the past 3 years. She is an LLM graduate from NALSER University of Law, Hyderabad, with a dual undergraduate degree in journalism and law. Ma'am, all of us are eagerly waiting to hear your views. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on board. Also, I would like to thank Shubhi ma'am, teacher from UP, who's also spoken, on the topic. So, since they've already covered the basics of the topic, what exactly is required to understand the goal that we are aiming at as a country, right? I would just like to add in, fill in a few points wherever I thought, we could just have an elaborate discussion, some more enhanced discussion. So, number one, I would also like to point out that as a country, as a state in international law, we have certain obligations to fulfill, right? So, when we're talking about sustainable development goals, which is the entire point in focus, it is compulsory for all nations to attain them. So, we have a certain target, which is 2030, as far as I know, wherein our country is aiming to achieve those targets. So, like our speakers have already mentioned, we have certain schemes in place by the government. We have every school individually working on the curriculum to bring in about changes. Right. So one such instance that I would like to highlight is this particular circular, which is given out by the Ministry of Women and Children and Education, and also along with the UGC. But it targets children above the age of 16. Okay, when they're supposed to have something called gender champions in their schools, which is about probably in the 11th and 12th grade. Right. So you need, as an institution, you're supposed to have gender champions, which is very much aligned to the goals that we're talking about today. So, at an institutional level, you're supposed to have activities which aim at gender equality. We're supposed to aim at gender equity, and we're supposed to aim at gender inclusivity. Now, all these three things are very different, right? So, when we talk about gender equality, is trying not to discriminate amongst genders. When we're talking about gender equity, it is about probably having certain schemes or probably having certain extra useful promotive mechanisms, so that you allow certain kind of gender to perform well within the schools, right? Probably giving scholarships to girls is one of the parameters to understand gender equity. And gender inclusivity would also mean allowing genders from different spectrum to be a part of this entire say goal to achieve equality. So this is a little slightly controversial, but I will just touch upon these issues. Number one is also including LGBTQ population at school level. Okay. Now, if you look at the Western, scenario, we know that it's a little different. Like, we know that certain European countries are a little conservative, probably predominantly Catholic, and they do not allow LGBTQ population at school level to be taken up as an issue. But we know in America this is taken up as an issue, right? Some kids at school level are allowed to identify as trans persons, right? So at school level, you can tell your teacher that I don't belong to a specific gender binary. I don't think I'm a he. I don't think I'm a she. Right? I feel like I am they. They allow students to use their pronouns. Again, it is a little controversial because the idea is that children at that age might not be able to know what they're getting into, right? But I've also had a lot of instances. I've met real time people in India, and not just urban population but also rural population, where they felt like at a very early age they felt like they did not belong to certain gender binary, right? A very close friend of mine, I remember we were having one of the conversations. She identifies as they them, and she told me that when she was in school, she used to be asked to wear kurta and suit, right? And now, from a very young age, she used to feel very uncomfortable. She used to be like, I don't identify as a woman. And I knew at a very young age that I don't identify as a woman. And that uniform used to make me very uncomfortable. Right. So these neutrality in these certain standards, like uniform, probably can be taken up in schools. Right. And if you think a child is not comfortable in their body, right, you should be able to have a conversation with your teachers, and this dialogue should open at every level. Like, I remember when I was in my master's college as well, I had met a real transgender person, right, an actual transgender person, and that person told me that person ran away from their village, right, because everybody, he used to wear a sari, he used to cross dress, right, everybody in the village would be like, oh, you're not a boy, you're somebody we don't like, etc. That person felt so uncomfortable. They have a very different experience. They feel like they're being ostracized and not accepted. That person had to run away from their village, move to a city, right? And they did not live a very good life. Today that person is into sex work, and they sort of have a lot of problems. They have a lot of health problems, they have a lot of livelihood problems, etc. And all of this can be curtailed if schools, not just in the urban population but in the rural population, also identify this entire issue and come up with initiatives to become more sensitized. Teachers should also be more sensitized. I know a lot of teachers who don't accept this. I know a lot of teachers in India who still not come to the terms that this is a possibility. We can have a third gender, but we have our Supreme Court. We have court judgments which say that okay, third gender is completely acceptable, and that has to trickle down to school as well. It is a little problematic when we talk about surgical procedures. That should children be allowed to have surgical procedures? Obviously, in many countries they're not allowed. So obviously that is something even I'm not completely in support, because maybe, but psychologically you should create a safe space and an environment in school where children are allowed to identify, talk with each other, and they don't have experiences where they have to run away, and not have a safe life afterwards, or much, or lead a life where they're not comfortable later on, or something that's not of any benefit to them, right? It's one of the important points that I wanted to highlight. And besides this, I was also going to talk about religion. So religion is a very tricky issue, right? Religious reasons could also be one of the detriments to deny access to female students, right? This happens a lot, right? So interestingly, I thought, this is a problem restricted to India. So I thought, maybe we are, as developing countries, not very progressive. We don't try to balance religion versus education and other important things. But yesterday, when I was doing my research, I found that even in the US, we have n number of cases in their courts, something that dates back to 1970s, where somebody challenged a policy. So they have a certain community called an Amish community in the US. Okay, they're complete Catholics, and in the Amish community, right, you can gain education till your eighth grade, and after eighth grade, you have to get certain vocational training, which is suitable for their Amish rural life. Okay, so they saw a policy when all the kids were getting education till the eighth standard, and then they were dropping out and getting special vocational training to get to probably become suitable for their rural life. And this got challenged in the court of law in the US. But even in the US, they said that okay, we cannot stop religious practices from taking complete backseat. And they said okay, as long as they're getting their basic education, as long as they're getting their vocational training, then maybe we can't do anything about this community because they're very focused. And if we are infringing, or if we are saying that okay, Amish community stop doing this, then we are infringing the religious rights. So this tricky, interplay between religion and education has always been a problem everywhere, and even in India, especially in the context of hijab ban, where we're talking right now, and other important elements, even in India, we see that a lot of women are dropped out of their after attaining puberty. Some come from a religious context. These things, are very tricky for the courts and the government to also handle, and the changes has to come from the society within. So we, as a community or a society, have to understand that no, irrespective of our obligations to our religion or our faith, we have to allow female children, uh, girls, to attain compulsory and basic education, right? All right. I hope this helps. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Preethi ma'am. I think for sure, gender, and whenever we talk about inclusivity, it is a high time that, we stop at recognizing only the two genders, but to expand our knowledge of the gender spectrum. And I think one of our first questions that we made for you was regarding, talking about other genders. So really, I'm very thankful that you brought in, talked about this issue and also about religion. Obviously, in India, it is one of the, sort of the most talked about issue, but also sort of the most conflicting issue. So thank you so much for this. We would now move on to our next guest. Our next speaker, Ms. Chandrika Sanwal, has done internships at different kinds of setups like private schools, clinical setups, NGO, and special schools. At present, she's working as a special education teacher. As a teacher in government schools, she's worked at grassroots level in the field of education every day. She works with the children of age group of 4 to 18 years, both having and not having special needs. Having worked with the students from diverse age group and backgrounds, she understands the psychology, patterns, habits, and needs of children as per their age and environment, and hence she aims for their holistic development. She wants to see discrimination-free and technologically advanced classrooms in every state of our nation. We would call you now, ma'am, to please enlighten us with your experiences and encourage us with your motivating words.
A very good morning, all of you. Thank you, Devika, for such nice words of appreciation. The first two panelists talked in detail about the problems and the possible solutions. How can we bring the solutions at the grassroots level, starting from the pre-primary class groups? And Preethi ma'am brought forward the issue of the third gender. And my speech goes around basically to the third point and the first 2 points as well. So I can start my speech by stating the facts and the figures about literacy rates, especially in terms of the gender ratio or the dropouts after a certain age. But before I get into the facts and figure, let's see some incidences from our daily lives. Remember going to any shop or a toy store to bought a gift for a child. The first question the shopkeeper asks is, "What is the age of the kid?" And we reply. The second pet question of the shopkeeper is it a boy or a girl? The moment you reply girl, the shopkeeper will like, Oh, it's a girl. Let me show you some Barbies, some princess, some kitchen toys, and obviously all in the shade of pink. The second incident is, remember going into the any classroom in a co-ed school. 90% of the classroom will have this pet sitting arrangement, girls on one side, boys on the other side. Even the roles in the fancy dress are pre-decided. What a girl will become, what a boy will become. Even in assemblies, we have separate lines. Let's talk about another incident, which happened to me few months back. I have a student in ninth standard. His motor skills of one hand is very weak. So I was advising him some activities that involved use of both the hands. So I asked him that please to start doing washing dishes, drying clothes, cooking. He interrupted me in between and said, "Ma'am, I have my sisters to do all these things. Please suggest some activities that are meant for me, like gymming, doing outdoor exercises." The same problem I have with a kid who is in the fifth standard, and I suggested the same activities that you start doing this basic course at home. The next day, his mother came to me and said, "Ma'am, he himself volunteered to wash dishes." He's a fifth standard boy, and the earlier one was a ninth standard boy. Here comes the entire point of gender sensitization at an early age. Education is an essential growth for any democratic country. The spirit of Indian Constitution is to provide education and equal opportunities irrespective of the caste, gender, religion. Everyone has a gender identity. Yes, everyone has a gender identity. To understand this term, let's focus on the two very common myths which everyone at every age group has. Myth number one is gender is binary. What that means is that we have only two choices, either to be muscular and male or to be feminine or female. Nothing in between, nothing beyond. The second myth is the person's sex and gender is the same thing, which in fact is quite different. Sex is biology, it's our anatomy, it is the assigned gender. But gender identity is something what we feel like, what we want to be. The sex and the gender may align for some and may not align for the other. Like for me, my biological sex is a girl and I align my gender as a girl. So life is easy for me. But for the other, no. Life is not that easy. One in every 2000 born children are born with the genitals which do not conform to the two boxes of male and female. That means more than two children per day. And this fact alone is an eye opener for all of us that this is the high time we focus on this issue. When the child is born, we declare the sex as well as a gender. Yes, it is a boy, it is a girl. And from the next moment, the dresses are decided, the color codes of the room are decided, even the profession is decided when the child is born. Because we don't give our children the choice that what do they identify with. We don't teach our children that there exists a third gender as well. So this issue is to be taken from the very grassroots level. The acceptance and the change in the psychology is not only demanded by the parents and the teachers, but it has to be instilled in the coming generation. And the best way to do that is to start it from the school level. So, what we as teachers can do in our general classrooms is first make a intentional sitting plan. Don't go for this boys and girls rows. Make an intentional sitting plan. Educate teachers and the in charges about this issue because they are the one who are going to teach the children and also brings the acceptance. If the acceptance is not in the teacher, if we ourselves are using this girl and boy language, what will we teach the children? The third one is breaking the color codes. Starting from the color codes, we can break the other codes as well, which is the professional codes, which is the likes and dislikes codes. So don't assume that a boy will come in a pant only or a girl will come in a skirt only if given the choice. The girl will come in a blue color and the boy will come in a the girl will come in a pink and the boy will come in a blue color. No, it's not the same. We teachers need to come out of the boy girl language for sure. Change in the textbooks are required. Like how many chapters or in which subject do we see the stories of the third gender? We see the examples of the third gender. Either the examples, you take any textbook, you take any subject, either the examples given or the stories, the main characters in the story is a boy or a girl. Till now, how many chapters do we have like that? How many incidences in the textbooks do we have like that? I don't find any. Yes, after the act of 2019 we do have a column, the third column of a third gender. In many performers, in many forms which I fill being a government teacher, there is a column for boy, girl, and a third gender. But how many ticks do we get under that column? How many ticks do we have uh, under that column till date? No, because parents don't come and say, ma'am, this is my child admission, and they tick that column as a third gender while filling the admission form. They still don't do that. So we need to bring changes in the psychology, in the mindset. We need to spread the awareness that yes, the third gender exists and they are equally important. They have a equally important space in the society. We need to teach the children that humanity comes first before gender and society. And if we want to address the issue at the school level, we need to see the problems and the solutions at a different age group. The kindergarten students are usually innocent, but they don't remain innocent for long because they learn from us, the adults, and they start to talk in the terms of binary gender. Moving ahead to the higher classes, we have the issues of hate crimes, bullying, discrimination. So that's another sort of issue when we move to the higher classes. If somebody is present in their class who is not, who doesn't fit to the stereotypical behaviors, they are subjected to bullying, they are subjected to hate crimes, and it happens everywhere, be it a private school or be it a government school. I will just conclude by saying that children who learn to respect all the genders equally have the potential to become instruments to the social change. A gender sensitized person make conscious effort for the environment, for everyone around him or her to flourish and prosper. If you're not going to teach our children this, if you're not going to bring acceptance in our own psychology, will not be able to accept and respect the third gender. We have hardly come forward by respecting the second gender, which is the woman, which is the girl. And here we are, the third gender standing in front of us demanding respect since ages. And when are we going to do that? So we have to work both the ways, respecting the second gender as well as the third gender, because it is now the high time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your inspiring words. Each and every line said by you was very relatable. You spoke in detail about there is something in between girls and boys. Thank you, ma'am. Now, let us move to our discussion round.
Yes. So, I would like to ask some questions with our guests here. It was an amazing discussion, and I feel that everything that we sort of tend to ask, you've already answered in some sort of ways and sense, which I mean, it's really nice that everyone sort of covered everything. But then Still, we'll talk about a few more things. Firstly, I would like to ask something from Chandrika ma'am. Ma'am, you've worked with the people of special needs, for like quite a long period of time. And since we're talking about inclusivity, we have as a nation worked towards disabled people and people with special needs. We have brought in laws, we have brought in a lot of changes, but then still there, even they face, go through a lot of discrimination still. So what do you think can be some sort of viable measures that can be brought in the schools or at the primary level for that instance, so that there is sort of some awareness about this issue as well?
Thank you, Devika, for the question. The possible solutions can be, the first one is make efforts for inclusion. And when I say make efforts for inclusion, I mean not only being aware, but also bringing the acceptance in our mindsets. We need to generate awareness also about the policies and the government norms, because to some extent, yes, the fear of the law works in our nation. So if we instill that fear of the law amongst the parents or the children, yes, they will mind their ways and they will be disciplined. So we need to make efforts for the inclusion. The second thing is names and the pronouns. It's high time that we ask the other person that what pronoun do you feel comfortable with. Everyone's essential dignity is to be called by their choice, whether they like to be called by he or whether they like to be called by she. The third point is access to the restroom facilities. We still don't have it in our nation for the third gender. Even for the disabled students, there is a particular infrastructure guidelines that is to be followed when we build a restroom for the disabled children or the people. We at times we see the signage that this is for disabled the washroom is for the disabled person, but you will find it very how would I say that the door is so small that even the wheelchair cannot enter the door. Then what is the purpose of having a separate washroom? The guidelines are so specific that there is a proper measurement of the level of the ground and the sink level, the foot length, the diameter of the railing, the handrails which are installed on the stairs. There are guidelines of it. Because if you have some deformity in your hand, suppose you have big fingers, small fingers, long fingers, and your fingers cannot be held along that railing which is along with the stair, then what is the purpose of having that railing there? So until unless we will not follow the rules, we will not respect the rules, we cannot have the facilities, the infrastructure barriers will always be there for those who doesn't fit to the normal. The fourth point is ideal personalities. How many examples do we give to our children of the personalities who belong to the transgender and achieved something great in their life? How many examples do we give about the disabled person who have achieved something great? There are so many examples. We talk about the personalities, but we don't tell them that okay, they have this disability, okay, their gender identity was something different. We just talk about what they did, what change they bought, what inventions they did, but not about the issues which will change the psychology of the children. The fourth is provide financial assistance. Financial assistance is very important if we want to empower the marginalized communities. In schools, we have many schemes. The fee reimbursement is there, fee waiver is there, free education is there. But in how many states? I am from Delhi. I know it's there in Delhi. It's there in Delhi government schools. But if you move to the other states, is there any financial assistance provided? Or do they reach the correct person? Even it is provided by the government, do they reach to the people who really needs it. And the last point is establishment of anti-discrimination cell in every school. If it is not for every school, at least in the district level, there should be anti-discrimination cell, and which will not only cater the issue of discrimination among girls and boys, but also the issues faced by the transgenders, the issues faced by the disabled people, because there are norms. One such norm I will give example is mental retardation is a very common term which we have been using since ages, but it has been replaced by RCI, the Rehabilitation Council of India. We cannot use the term mental retardation. It is intellectually disabled. Yeah, intellectual disability is the correct term. But we don't see such advertisement in media or in newspaper that this law has been changed. There are no ads for this. There are ads for Colgate, Pepsodent, the soaps. Do we have any ad from the government to just spread the awareness that don't use the term mental retardation, use intellectual disability, don't use disabled, specially abled, don't call transgender by the names, give respect. So unless we aim to change the psychology of the community by instilling these ideas through advertisements, through media, in schools, in chart papers, in boards, in wallpapers, will not be able to change the psychology, and the change that we wish to see will not happen until unless we work on the daily basis. So I hope that we'll start seeing the society, the people around us with a changed attitude, with a changed perspective. And before calling anybody he or she, we might ask, what will you prefer? Instead of asking about the partners, do you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, we can ask about, do you have a partner? So these small changes in the conversation will give empowerment to those people. Yes, somebody is there who understands us. At least somebody asked me this question, what will I prefer to be called as? Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now my next question is to Rashmi, ma'am. क्या पेंडेमिक की वजह से जेंडर इक्वालिटी स्कूल में और ज्यादा खराब हुआ है?
हाँ मैम, आप कह सकते हो कि ऐसा हुआ है, इसका प्रभाव पड़ा है। पैंडेमिक की वजह से बहुत सारी ऐसी प्रॉब्लम्स आई हैं, जो हमें स्कूल में एज़ अ टीचर देखने को मिली हैं। पैंडेमिक की वजह से ऐसा कई बार हुआ है कि हमारे रूरल एरिया में हमारा स्कूल पड़ता है, तो वहाँ पे कई बार ऐसा होता है कि पेरेंट्स गर्ल्स की एजुकेशन को स्टॉप कर देते हैं और वो ये देखते हैं कि चलो ठीक है, बॉयज़ हैं या घर का बेटा है, कहते हैं ना घर का चिराग है, तो वो उनका नाम रोशन करेगा, तो वो उनकी एजुकेशन को कंटिन्यू करना चाहते हैं। लेकिन बेटियों की एजुकेशन को उन्होंने स्टॉप किया है। ये प्रॉब्लम मैंने खुद फेस की है और इसके लिए मैंने उनके पेरेंट्स से बात की है, जो भी फैसिलिटीज़ हमारे थ्रू उनको हो सकी है, वो हमने प्रोवाइड की है। कई सारी ऐसी गर्ल्स थी जिनकी एजुकेशन को रोक दिया गया और हमने उसको कंटिन्यू कराया है। उसके साथ ही साथ अगर हम कुछ फाइनेंशियल उनको सपोर्ट दे सकते हैं, एनजीओज़ से बात करके हम उनको अगर कुछ अरेंज करा सकते हैं, तो वो भी कोशिश की है हमने। और कई बार तो ऐसा हुआ है कि पेरेंट्स को ही बच्चों ने खो दिया है। कुछ ऐसी भी प्रॉब्लम हमने देखी है। ऐसे भी हमने टचिंग मोमेंट्स देखे हैं जहाँ बच्चों ने अपने पेरेंट्स को खो दिया पैंडेमिक की वजह से और उनको अपनी एजुकेशन को वहीं पे रोकना पड़ा। तो उन हालात को भी हमने निपटने के लिए बच्चों से बात की और देखा कि क्या हम सपोर्ट कर सकते हैं। अभी चंद्रिका मैम ने कहा कि जैसे दिल्ली स्कूल्स में गवर्नमेंट ने काफ़ी सारे अरेंजमेंट्स किए हैं डिसेबल स्टूडेंट्स के लिए, तो यूपी गवर्नमेंट्स ने भी कई सारे ऐसे इनिशिएटिव लिए हैं कि हम उन बच्चों को किस तरह से हेल्प कर सकते हैं। जैसे स्कॉलरशिप का अरेंजमेंट करना या गर्ल्स के लिए अलग से कुछ फैसिलिटीज़ देना। तो इस तरह से हम उन गर्ल्स चाइल्ड को भी आगे अपने मेन स्ट्रीम से जोड़ने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। हाँ, ये आपकी बात बिल्कुल सच है कि पैंडेमिक की वजह से हमने इस चीज़ को रियलाइज़ किया है स्कूलों में। थैंक यू मैम।
Thank you so much, ma'am. Due to paucity of time, I think it's time that we sort of bring an end to this discussion. We wanted to talk to you a lot more, trust me. It was an amazing, enthralling session. And, talking about inclusivity and gender with all of us women here was an amazing experience for me. I'm sure it was for everyone who was watching and for Karima as well.
And I
Um,
would just like to add that I really appreciate that this was an all-female panel. This was my first. I've never been in one. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah. Um, as we come to an end, I would just want like last remarks, anything you want to say before leaving about this session, about the topic, any thoughts that you have in mind to just wrap the session. Thank you so much. I would just request you to please keep it short. And yes, thank you. We will start with Shubhi ma'am.
Surely, firstly, thank you so much for inviting me to this women powered conference. As my co speaker rightly pointed out, it was really insightful to learn about various thought processes behind basic nuances of what all of us face or have witnessed somebody else facing when they want to acquire basic rights of education. I would just want to conclude by saying that, as my co-speaker Chandrika rightly pointed out, that it's important for us to change the psychology of the society as a whole and to be receptive about the kind of changes that we're trying to look for. For example, actually using and defining the term intellectual disability. The reason why maybe people have been hesitant to make use of it is because they don't understand what is the importance of using that term versus having a mental disability or anything of such sort. Likewise, when we talk about bringing any transformation in place, we always want to look forward to bringing or implementing new laws to kind of address any concern. But what we find is there are a plethora of legislations already in place that actually give basic rights to all these sectors. To quickly, I suppose the golden triangle is what we call in law, which is Article 14, that gives women the right to equality. Then there's Article 16, which gives equal employment opportunities to everybody, irrespective of their gender, their caste, their sex, etc. And then there's Article 15, that says that in no private or governmental institution or platform, any sort of discrimination could be made. And a corresponding article is Article 15.3, which says that uh, the state government has to take adequate measures that would empower the women who would want to seek any opportunities, be it education, be it sanitization, be it healthcare, etc. So, there is a lot that the Indian Constitution has already empowered and entrusted us as citizens and practitioners and the flag bearer of justice in India to bring forth the transformation that we talk about, that we desire to have in place. So instead of looking for forward-looking laws, let's just try to implement efficiently and adequately of what we already have in place. And the first step is to actually spread awareness by rewiring the psychology of people to understand why there is a need to use adequate terms. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that. Preethi ma'am, if you can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for again inviting us. And obviously, like I mentioned, it's very nice to see an all-female panel. So I think since we didn't get to discuss the Q&A as well, but maybe I'll just in very brief address the question. Yeah, because that was an interesting question and that made me look back on the history of how our education works. That question was, if we have segregated education in India, how is that helping equality per se, right? Now, when I started looking at the entire history of things, it's very interesting that having separate female schools was actually a very feminist approach to giving education to women, right? So there are two counter narratives here. One, it was also a colonial narrative because they didn't want boys and girls to mingle. They didn't want any kind of social interaction before they were getting betrothed to each other. So certain societal norms which are a little conservative, which is why they separated schools per se, right? But over a period of time, if you take our own Savitribai Phule as an example, many other stalwarts who tried to bring in female education to India, right? They opened separate schools for girls, and that went on, and the legacy has gone on over a period of time. So it's not discrimination per se. We're trying to create equity here, right? So when we talk about equity, right? So let's see why we have separate girls' schools. Obviously, there are both plus and minuses. Pluses being that there's an entire study which says that if you are in a single, say, gender school, a single sex school, right, your academic performance is higher, and you probably have a lot of interaction which is more which is creating a safe space for you because everybody belongs to the same gender, etc. Minus is obviously your social interaction reduces, and surprisingly you're stereotyped into specific roles if you're in a single gender school. So if, let's just say, you will be encouraged to get into home science or something that is not a conventional job which will give you a lot of money, right? So they will not encourage you to get into probably a STEM job. They'll not encourage you to probably take a mathematics, etc., which has been a problem in many of the places. So there are both pluses and minuses, but understand that the segregation is to create equity, and there is a feminist narrative to it, right? With a bit of conservative elements as well. But understand that the end goal is to give education overall. So even if you are catering to a conservative class of people, when parents might be comfortable sending their students or their kids to a environment where there are only female students, the end goal has to be looked into. So the end goal and the intent here is to create education for girls overall, and that's a very interesting question. Made me research more. So thank you for that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I myself come from a women's college, so I mean, I sort of get the narrative that was put into place while thinking of all these institutions. And yes, thank you so much for answering that question, even though we didn't sort of have the time for that. But yes, Rashmi ma'am, you can go forward with your thoughts.
यस मैम, थैंक यू, आपने मुझे फिर से इनवाइट किया अपने व्यूज़ देने के लिए। तो बहुत अच्छा लगा मुझे आज इस कॉन्फ्रेंस का हिस्सा बन के। मुझे नहीं पता था कि मुझे इतने अच्छे स्पीकर्स को सुनने का मौका मिलेगा। काफ़ी कुछ सीखा भी है मैंने। और अगर हम बात करें कि अभी हम जिस प्रॉब्लम्स को फेस कर रहे हैं, उनको कैसे सॉर्ट आउट कर सकते हैं, तो मेरा मानना है कि सबसे जो बेटर ऑप्शन है हमारे पास, वो है हमारी एजुकेशन। एजुकेशन एंड अवेयरनेस, यही 2 ऐसे हमारे पास बहुत पावरफुल वेपन्स हैं कि जिनके थ्रू हम इन सारी जितनी भी प्रॉब्लम्स आ रही हैं, जैसे जेंडर इनइक्वालिटी का आ रहा है और डिस्क्रिमिनेशंस का आ रहा है और ड्रॉप आउट्स का आ रहा है, इन सारी प्रॉब्लम्स को सॉल्व कर सकते हैं। साथ ही साथ हम जो हमारे एनवायरनमेंट पे हमें काम करना है, उसको भी हम अवेयरनेस के थ्रू ही कवर कर सकते हैं। आज हमें जो अपने एंसेस्टर्स से मिला हुआ है, अगर हम चाहें कि वो अपनी नेक्स्ट जनरेशन को ट्रांसमिट करें या हम उसे उतने ही रिसोर्सेस अवेलेबल करा सकें, तो उसके लिए हमें बहुत ज़रूरी होगा कि इन सारे गोल्स पे हम सब मिल के काम करें। और आज इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में हमने कई नई चीज़ें भी देखी हैं, काफ़ी सारी चीज़ें प्रीति मैम को भी मैं काफ़ी एप्रिशिएट कर रही हूँ। मैंने काफ़ी कुछ नया उनसे सुना है और थर्ड जेंडर के बारे में जो उन्होंने अपने व्यूज़ दिए, वो भी काफ़ी मुझे इंस्पायर कर रहे हैं। तो इस तरह से इस कॉन्फ्रेंस का हिस्सा बन के मुझे काफ़ी अच्छा लगा और आप लोगों को भी, पूरी टीम को, sarkarischool.com की टीम को भी धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगी कि मुझे इस अवसर पे उन्होंने जुड़ने का मौका दिया और अपनी बात रखने के लिए मुझे प्रॉपर एक प्लेटफ़ॉर्म प्रोवाइड किया। और साथ ही साथ इतने जो गेस्ट स्पीकर्स आए, उनके व्यूज़ मैंने जाने, काफ़ी कुछ सीखा। तो निश्चित ही हम आज की इस कॉन्फ्रेंस से जो कुछ सीख रहे हैं उसे आगे भी पहुँचाने की कोशिश करेंगे। स्टूडेंट्स तक भी उसे इम्प्लीमेंट करने की कोशिश करेंगे और जो एनजीओज़ हैं उनसे भी मैं एक रिक्वेस्ट करूँगी कि देखिए जो हमारे अर्बन एरियाज़ में स्कूल हैं, उन्हें हम काफ़ी कुछ प्रोवाइड कर पा रहे हैं। गवर्नमेंट से भी प्रोवाइड कर पा रहे हैं या उनके पेरेंट्स वेल साउंड हैं, वेल्दी हैं, तो वो उनको सारी फैसिलिटीज़ दे रहे हैं। लेकिन जो रूरल एरियाज़ में बच्चे पढ़ रहे हैं, उनके पास अभी बहुत सारा लैक ऑफ फैसिलिटीज़ हैं, वो टोटली डिपेंड है, तो सिर्फ़ और सिर्फ़ हम टीचर्स पे डिपेंड है। जैसे कि मैं स्वयं भी एक गवर्नमेंट टीचर हूँ, मैं देख रही हूँ, मैं फेस कर रही हूँ, पैंडेमिक से पहले क्या हाल थे और पैंडेमिक के बाद क्या हाल है। इन जो गोल्स हैं, इनको अगर हमें प्रॉपर्ली कवर करना है, तो उन बच्चों को हमें जागरूक करना पड़ेगा। और अगर हमें जैसे हम महिला सशक्तिकरण की बात करते हैं, तो अर्बन एरियाज़ में तो हम इसको कवर कर रहे हैं। मैंने खुद देखा है चेंज क्योंकि अर्बन एरिया से मैं खुद बिलॉन्ग करती हूँ और रूरल एरिया मेरा जो वर्क प्लेस है वो है। तो मैं खुद देखती हूँ क्या डिफ़रेंस है। अर्बन एरियाज़ में तो इक्वालिटी की बात बन रही है, ठीक है, हम समझ रहे हैं। हम गर्ल चाइल्ड को भी उतना ही प्यार, उतना ही एजुकेशन, उतनी ही फैसिलिटी दे रहे हैं। बट अगर हम रूरल एरियाज़ की बात करते हैं, तो सिस्टम बिल्कुल डिफरेंट है। वहाँ पे गर्ल चाइल्ड को वो घर के कामों में लगाना पसंद करते हैं। बॉयज़ को वो पढ़ाना चाहते हैं, लेकिन लेडीज़ हैं उनको घर के अंदर रखना चाहते हैं, पर्दे में रखना चाहते हैं। मेल बाहर जाके काम कर रहे हैं, गर्ल्स को निकलने की इजाज़त नहीं होती है या आप ये कह सकते हो कि प्राइमरी लेवल पे जब बच्चा पढ़ रहा होता है, जो बालिकाएँ हमारी हैं वो एजुकेट हो रही हैं, लेकिन आफ्टर दैट वो सेकेंडरी एजुकेशन तक नहीं पहुँच पाती हैं। कई बार प्रॉब्लम ये आती है डिस्टेंस होता है, उन्हें अपने पास में कोई अच्छा कॉलेज नहीं मिल रहा होता, कोई अच्छा इंटर कॉलेज नहीं मिल रहा होता है, डिग्री कॉलेजेस की तो बात ही दूर है। तो ये जो डिस्टेंस है वो भी मेंटेन करने की ज़रूरत है और साथ ही साथ हमें अवेयरनेस फैलानी है। हमें बताना पड़ेगा गाँवों में कि नहीं, अगर हमें एक अच्छी कंट्री को सपोर्ट करना है, एक अच्छे से हमको समाज को स्थापित करना है, तो हमें जो बालिकाएँ हमारी गर्ल चाइल्ड हैं, उनको भी प्रमोट करना पड़ेगा। कई जगह बात आती है हाइजीन की, तो वो भी अभी उतना अवेयरनेस गाँव में नहीं है, उसके लिए भी काम करने की ज़रूरत है। वहाँ पे भी ऐसा होता है कि कई बार अगर किसी बीमारी से कोई बच्चा ग्रसित हो जाता है, तो उसको निकाल के अलग कर दिया जाता है, तो इन सारी चीज़ों पे काम करने की ज़रूरत अगर एसडीजी के गोल्स पे हम बात करें तो इन सारे गोल्स को कवर करने की बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरत है। अर्बन एरियाज़ में तो हम फिर भी इन गोल्स को कवर कर पा रहे हैं, रूरल एरियाज़ में अभी हमारा एक्सेस बहुत कम है। और अगर देखा जाए तो सिर्फ़ और सिर्फ़ प्राइमरी का टीचर ही है जो उन सारी चीज़ों को वहाँ तक ले जा रहा है, अदरवाइज़ वो उन नॉर्म्स को भी नहीं जानते हैं, उन फैसिलिटीज़ को भी नहीं जानते हैं जो गवर्नमेंट उन्हें प्रोवाइड कर रही है उनके बेटरमेंट के लिए। उन्हें ये बताना पड़ेगा और आती है बात कि किस तरह से हम जो टीचर्स हैं वो एनवायरनमेंट के लिए काम कर रहे हैं। तो मैं आपको बता दूँ कि मेरे स्कूल में पर्टिकुलर जितने भी फैन चलते हैं, लाइट्स चलती हैं, वो सब हम सोलर एनर्जी के थ्रू ही चला रहे हैं। हम इलेक्ट्रिसिटी को एक तो वेस्ट होने से बचाना बच्चे को बता रहे हैं, दूसरा ये भी बता रहे हैं किस तरह से हम इन रिसोर्सेज़ का इस्तेमाल करके किस तरह से एनवायरनमेंट को भी बचा सकते हैं। हम कंपोस्ट बनाना बच्चों को बता रहे हैं। जिससे ये जितने भी केमिकल्स हैं जो अभी हमारे क्रॉप्स को नष्ट करते चले जा रहे हैं, उनको किस तरह से हम बचा सकते हैं, तो इस बात पे भी बात कर रहे हैं जो एनवायरनमेंट को सेव कर रहे हैं। वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग पे हम बात करते हैं, जिससे हम बच्चे को वो भी बता सकें किस तरह से हमें वाटर्स को भी सेफ रखना है, किस तरह से हमें एयर को पॉल्यूट होने से बचाना है। तो इन सारी चीज़ों पे हम काम कर रहे हैं। आज बहुत अच्छा लगा मुझे। मैं अपने शब्दों को यहीं पे विराम दूँगी और इतना ही कहूँगी कि रियली ये एक बड़ी फ्रूटफुल कॉन्फ्रेंस थी जिसमें मैंने आप सभी गेस्ट स्पीकर्स को भी सुना और ऑर्गेनाइजर्स को भी सुना। अच्छा लगा, थैंक यू।
थैंक यू सो मच मैम। आपको सुन के आपने जितने काम करे हैं, व्हेन वी वर रीडिंग अबाउट, हमने एक स्टोरी करी थी सरकारी स्कूल ने आप पे, एंड व्हेन वी वर रीडिंग अबाउट हम इतने इंस्पायर्ड थे आपसे। सो थैंक यू सो मच आप जो भी कर रही हैं उसके लिए, एंड थैंक यू सो मच फॉर बीइंग हियर। चंद्रिका मैम, इफ यू could just give your last thoughts.
First of all, I would like to thank the Sarkari school for giving me this opportunity. I know the time constraint and most of the points are already covered by the other panelists, so I will keep it short. If you want to see the change and if we want to see the change It is the time that the glass ceilings of the previous generation and the next generation comes crashing down. Secondly, it's time that we follow the policy of live and let live. It is a time that we inculcate this in our habit and in our children's habit, that humanity comes first before the gender and society. We are not going to instill this in the psychology, but make it a habit that yes, respect other people as a human first, and then move to the gender or the societal norms. We just need to remember the three words and teach to the children these three words, the basic three words, that is compassion, accept, and respect. That's it. Just start with these three words and we will see the change one day. Thank you. Thank you, Sarkari School. Thank you, all the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, each and every one of you, for giving your valuable time. And thank you to the platform of Sarkari School for having such a nice conference. Now, I would like to call upon Divya to give a vote of thanks.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. What a marvelous and magnificent discussion it was. As we have come towards the end of this conference, a big round of applause for our respected guests of honor, patient viewers, and Crony team members. I would like to thank all of you for being a part of this session. I would like to convey my deep regards to all the panel members for giving us your precious time and enlightening us with such deep discussions. My profound thanks to Ms. Chandrika Sanwal and Ms. Shubhi Bhandari for their valuable suggestions in reminding us facts and figures of gender literacy through such a ground level incidents, showing the importance of gender identity also. How to broaden the base to gender equality. I must mention my deep sense of appreciation for Dr. Rashmi Tiwari for her time and describing us about setting goals in children at a young stage and how it relates to SDG 4. I would like to thank Ms. Preethi for giving us such useful insights and inspiring us. A very big thanks to Abhishek Ranjan sir, founder of our organization, for giving us this opportunity of an enlightening conference on such a big scale, which has been a great learning experience for all of us. Thank you so much, sir. Also, an event of this facet cannot happen in a day. The wheels start rolling days in advance. We are delighted to have a team of hardworking and motivating students and volunteers. I don't have enough words to thank everyone for the willingness they have shown and made this event a success. Thank you so much for coming out of your comfort zone and working towards it. Last but not the least, a big thanks to all our audience for giving us your time and actively participating in the discussion. This was for all of you. I conclude this session with the phrase, learning is a treasure that will follow its honor everywhere. Thank you so much. We sign off for the day.